Hey everyone, out in the internet world, welcome to Photos and Stories. I'm your host, Jay Blakesberg, and today we have an incredible photographer with us as our guest. We have Mr. Herbie Green. Herbie and I are old pals. Herbie's been living on the East Coast for upwards of 20 years now, but he is San Francisco through and through. Herbie grew up in California, went to high school here, and landed in San Francisco and was San Francisco Haight Ashbury family tribe member from the beginning. You know, he was there at ground zero when the zeitgeist began, before the media tapped into the entire thing and you know, turned it into the media circus that it became in this country. When the Haight was, the people that were there will tell you the years really were 65 and 66. That was really when it was at its core essence. But before we get to that, I've got a few things that I want to go over here. Some business, give people a minute or two to get online and check in with us. You know, you can watch this on the Relix YouTube channel. You can watch it on fans.com. You can watch it on Facebook. It's on my Facebook page, Jay Blakesberg Photography. It's on Herbie Green's Facebook page. It's on the Relix Facebook page, the Fans Facebook page. There's lots of places that you can watch this program today. And all of those places are being monitored by our pal Harrison, who works at Relix. And he's looking for your questions. So at the end of our presentation, the end of our conversation with Herbie, you know, we will take some questions from the audience for about 15 minutes or so. So if you've got cool questions you want to ask Herbie, then this is the place to do it. Drop them into any of those sources, and Harrison is monitoring all of those. So definitely do that. Obviously, there's a lot of thank yous. So fans.com is part of the Dayglow Ventures family of media properties. So that's Pete Shapiro. So I want to thank Pete Shapiro first of all. And that includes, of course, the Capitol Theater and the Brooklyn Bowls and Garcia's and Lock-In Festival and so much more. So thanks, Pete, for hosting my show, Stories and Photos. And I had a conversation with Pete a week or two ago when after I did Michael Zagaris, and he loved the program and said, let's keep doing this. And he said, but, you know, think about getting other non-photographers in there. And he goes, but what do we call it if they're not a photographer? I said, well, if it's a photographer like Herbie, we'll call it Photos and Stories. But if we get like a Bill Walton, we'll call it Stories and Photos. And Pete thought that was the greatest thing ever. He said, that's so meta, man. So we have a show that could change names at any time, from Photos to Stories to Stories and Photos. So keep your eyes out for more stuff. Coming up in the weeks ahead, next week, we're going to have a whole bunch of photographers on, and we're going to talk about this. This is the new book that we just did for the Capitol Theater in Port Chester, New York. This is one of Pete's venues. And Pete and I worked on this book with Brad Tucker and a whole bunch of other great photographers for a number of years. And we were supposed to have a really big book release party at Phil Lesch's 80th birthday at the Cap back in March. But of course, Rona had another idea for us. So Corona took over, and Rona said no book release party. So we're going to do a virtual one online tomorrow, not tomorrow, next Sunday, May 20, whatever it is, the 4th, I guess it is next Sunday. Same time, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. We're going to have some great photographers on there, so please join us for that. More thank yous. Jonathan Healy, thank you. He's our tech guru for fans.com. And of course, Will Schwerd, who's doing the teching today and directing the video. Thanks, Will. And Steph May over at the Capitol Theater, who does all our marketing. Thanks, Steph, for all your help. And of course, Harrison Azrati, who is handling all the questions. So I really want to take one quick second and talk about Save Our Stages. And so This is really super important, you guys. Right now, every single independent music venue in this country is at risk of not coming back. And if you're a live music fan, you want your music venues because we love our musicians and we're supporting them and they're doing performances online all the time. And if we have the resources, we're donating money, we're giving them money to their PayPals and their Venmos. But I also want to mention that all these independent venues, right? There's a new association called the National Independent Venue Association. If you just go to the saveourstages.com, go there. There's easy buttons to click on to send letters to your Congress people, to put this before Congress, which they're talking about right now. This is important. This week, they're talking about it. So it's a 1-minute survey. You put your name in there, your zip code, and it will go to your representative because we need to save these independent venues. The Capitol Theater in Portchester, Brooklyn Bowls everywhere, Terrapin Crossroads, Sweetwater, the Fox and Boulder Theater in Boulder, the Mishawaka, the Independent in San Francisco, the Fox in Oakland, and it goes on and on and on. Every city, everywhere where we live, there are these independent music venues that we go to, right? So, and every one of them has GoFundMe pages where you can support their staff because we want to keep these people employed because those employees are our family. We want all of those people to keep their jobs. So another way that you can help out is buy merch from the venues, buy their merch, right? Buy the band's merch, buy the venues merch. Anything that you can do to help these venues stay alive will benefit us when the time comes, when Rona is done and we get to go see live music again. We need those venues, right? We need the artists. We need the venues. So let's support everybody. National Independent Venue Association, saveourstages.com. Go check it out and send a letter to your congressman and send them an email directly. They have email addresses. Everything helps. They do listen. We need funding from our government for these businesses. All right. I think that's enough business for the moment. Let's get down to business with my pal, Herbie Green. So Herbie and I have known each other for, 35-ish years, give or take. I can't remember exactly where I met Herbie, but he was just always part of the scene. And he was always somebody that I really, really looked up to. When I first started looking at photographs in magazines and really Relix magazine and other magazines, the first photos that I saw of the Grateful Dead pretty much either belonged to Herbie Green or Jim Marshall, right? And those are the guys that were inspiring me to say, how do I become that person? How do I get to take portraits of Jerry Garcia or be on stage on Haight Street in 1968, like Jim Marshall's photo, And Herbie was a portrait photographer and Jim was a live photographer who did some portraits, but it was a different vibe between the two of these guys. I mean, Herbie's work was, first of all, the thing about Herbie Green is that he was probably the only hippie on the scene in the Haight-Ashbury in the 1960s, 64, 65, 66, and so on, shooting with a medium format camera, right? That's a 2 1/4. So the negative is 2 1/4 inches by 2 1/4 inches versus a 35 millimeter negative, which is, a third of the size, a quarter of the size of that negative. So he was shooting square portraits with a Bronica and eventually a Hasselblad. And we have a portrait of Herbie that's up here right now. I'm guessing it's a self-portrait that he did. And I don't know what year. Herbie, do you know what year this shot is of you up here with the long?
Actually, Jim Marshall.
Jim took that. Okay. And what year is that? Do you know?
Story, 67.
Right. We'll get to that in a second. So anyway, so Herbie's shooting medium format. And I think almost every photo we're going to see in this presentation of his is either medium format or large format, a 4x5 negative. That's a camera on a tripod with a cloth over your head. It's a very time consuming and a very precise art and science that Herbie mastered in the 1960s when people weren't doing that. Okay. Certainly not hippies in the Haight-Ashbury, right? And so Herbie was pretty groundbreaking on that level because of the technology that he was using. He was ahead of his time. And so Herbie did a big exhibit at the Robert Koch Gallery in San Francisco and showed many of these incredible portraits. And Robert Koch was a really, really high-end, fine art. This was not a rock and roll photography gallery. There really weren't rock and roll photography galleries 35 years ago. I'm not sure when the San Francisco Art Exchange started. They might have been around back then, but Morrison Hotel Gallery and all these other great places you can buy rock art didn't exist then. And Robert Koch came to Herbie and put on the show. And Robert Koch was a nationally renowned fine art photo gallery here in San Francisco. I believe that during the Oakland fires in 1990, Robert Koch's house burned down with millions of dollars of irreplaceable photographs. Do you remember that, Herbie?
Oh, he had a pre-Columbian feather cape, ceremonial Aztec cape. It's a mint shape, gone. Lots of 19th century photography. Even though it's tons of stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
It was really sad. Cars. Oh, cars. M1.
So Herbie, tell me why you picked up a medium format camera versus 35 millimeter. Why? Who inspired you? When did you first pick up a camera? What were the first things you photographed? Did you shoot with 35 millimeter first and then move on, or give me a little bit of background?
Yeah, I did in high school, but I moved to a 2 1/4 right away. And just because the negative was so much bigger. And the first camera was the Zycon Iconoflex I got from Sears and Roebuck catalog. It was great.
$5 or something, $10.
50 or something.
Yeah.
It's good. So anyway, I'm trying to answer all your questions, but there's so many. I wanted to be an artist, but I can't draw. So I wanted to get out of Yuba City, so I went to enroll in City College in San Francisco because they had a photography course.
And that's how you got down to the city from Yuba City, which is up in like Gold Country. That's how you got to San Francisco, by enrolling in that photography program.
Yeah, I got out of town. It was great.
And what year was that?
60.
Okay. And where did you live in the city when you got down here?
Lived in a variety of boarding houses, kind of thing. And then I ended up in a boarding house with a bunch of lefties, which was fun. And that's how we got into appreciating folk music and stuff. I always liked bluegrass. And that's how I met Garcia, was through bluegrass.
Do you remember what year you met Garcia?
Probably 64.
Uh-huh. Right. So early on. So even before they were the Warlocks, you already had met some of the freaks. And were you living by 64? Were you living in the Haight?
Geez, I wish you wouldn't ask those kind of questions.
I forgot. You're not good with dates. We'll skip the dates.
Yeah, the places I lived. I lived with Alan Cohen in a couple of places, the poet. I lived with the Thellans, opened a psychedelic shop. I went to high school with his wife, Ron Thellen, which is the story how I met them, was good. It was all pretty fast. It seemed like now it was, Herbie in the wilderness, but it all worked. It moved so fast, and then as soon as I moved to the Thellans' house, things started happening for me, because they got into the psychedelic shop, and I was going to state, I think, at the time. And that's about right.
All right, and then so you get out of photography school. You're living in the Haight, and you connect with a guy named Joseph Magnin, or a store, Joseph Magnin. There's a big giant department store in the Bay Area called Magnin. It's like a Macy's. But wasn't Joseph like a brother of that guy, and he had a smaller boutique clothing store?
It was a spin-off. It was just around the corner from Union Square. Wonderful, wonderful neighborhood, fun place.
And we've got a couple of photos here of some work that you were doing. So you're shooting fashion catalogs for Magnin. So here's this great shot of this woman in this incredible, looks like it must be vinyl, mini dress, but not quite so mini, down to her knees. Incredible fashion. And then also this next shot, which I really love, which is Marty Balin from the Airplane, photographed next to a model, which I think is also one of your Joseph Magnin models.
Yeah, we were at the Monterey Blues Festival. There's other pictures on site.
And was this your idea? Was this your suggestion to Joseph Magnin? Hey, let's go down and go to the Blues Festival and shoot some models with rock stars?
Nope, that was management. It was a really hip store. It was merchandise was all, Carnegie Street related Twiggy stuff, mini skirts and all that, and those hose, and it was great. I loved it.
I bet. So let's look at this first shot of the Grateful Dead here, where they're down at Ocean Beach, and they all got their fingers up in this very Beatle-esque pose.
Did we show the final code?
Yeah.
Oh, because that's on the wall, if you noticed.
Oh yeah, no, I did notice that the color shot of the girl in the mini dress is on the hieroglyphic wall. Yeah, I noticed that.
That's why I threw that out.
Oh yeah, no, I love that. I thought that was great.
It got everywhere.
And so what Herbie's referring to, if you go back, Will, a couple slides to that color shot in the background there, this is in Herbie's apartment, and he shot some of the most legendary portraits of the Grateful Dead, the Airplane, Great Society, Bill Graham, Chet Helms, everybody in front of that wall. We'll see some of those later. So when you sent me that photo yesterday, I loved seeing this model in this outfit in front of that wall. I just thought was so classic. But let's move back up to that Grateful Dead shot, which really at this point, when you photograph this band, they are called the Warlocks. Yeah, and so you do the very, very first photo shoot with this brand new band. That's Jerry Garcia, Bob Weir, Phil Lesh, Bill Kreutzmann, and Pigpen. And there's this session with Bobby with this short hair. Go to the next shot here where they're sitting on the steps. Tell me about how you connected with them.
I want to show you something. There's a point here. We need it. The hand. It's a hand. That's Hank Harrison.
On the right side of them.
On the photograph.
With the sign.
Is this the hand?
Of the one where they're pointing?
So yeah, they're pointing out, and there's a hand coming out of the frame.
Oh, okay. I can just barely see a little bit of it. I see.
Yeah, it says no trespassing.
Okay, got it. Right, funny. So did you approach them to do this photo shoot, or did they say, hey, Herbie, you're a freak, you have long hair, you have a camera, we need some pictures, we have a new band?
I don't remember. I think Hank, who was the guy, contacted me or saying, because I think we were all out of state. But like details like that, I don't remember. I know how I got a lot of the photographs done.
Right.
Through ID magazine. Little cultural point there.
Right. And then there's this great solo shot of Phil, obviously from the same session here. We'll talk about this more, but you have so many great photographs of Phil. And then there's the shot of the whole band, and they're inside this power station. Was this the same shoot, or it looks like they're different clothes? So I'm guessing it's a different shoot, and they're still the Warlocks at this point, correct?
Right. There's a PG&E power plant station, substation or something, and we hopped over the fence.
So more trespassing.
Yeah, we were gonna but we had a couple of pictures that we were gonna use for the first Warlock LP. No left turn unstoned.
Is that the same one that's got "Don't Ease Me In" on it?
I didn't get that.
I was wondering if I thought there was a record that had "Don't Ease Me In" on it and that song, but maybe I'm wrong.
I don't know.
Right, and then of course here, this shot here at the zoo with the big train. This is the San Francisco Zoo. Do you know if they become the Grateful Dead at this point, or are they still the Warlocks?
I think they're the Grateful Dead.
So now we're into the Grateful Dead, and then one of my most favorite photographs of the band, and which is the one of them under the Haight Ashbury sign. Under the Haight Ashbury sign. Tell me about this right here, about this shot and how this came about.
Let's just go out and take some pictures. The clothes came from Nasitica, Biggie Ceruta's place on Haight Street. And you see, like, Phil's got a price tag still on his. We just wandered around the neighborhood taking pictures.
And I think that's what this whole next series is. So, actually, no, yeah. So here's the back steps of 710 Ashbury, the little apartment that was attached to 710.
Yeah,
here's
Rifkin lived there. You asked me that.
Oh, Rifkin. So the band's manager lived in a little apartment underneath.
Rifkin sublet those places.
The whole house, including the apartment.
Yeah, and then he rented it to the band.
Right. Here's them underneath the psychedelic shop. And you said the psychedelic shop was owned by two brothers, Ron, and what was the other brother's name?
Jay
Thalen, right. And what did they sell at the psychedelic shop?
sold records, books, paraphernalia, some artwork, but records and books.
At this point, so we're still in about 1966 here. At this point, is Haight Street still 80% straight businesses and 20% hippie businesses, or is it starting to like become more hippie?
It'd be more like 10%.
Hippie businesses?
Yeah.
Right. I love again, and we'll talk about this when we get into this Haight Street photos of all the hippies, but I love that you see all the signs and stuff like that. So you're cruising around Haight Street. Here's this clothing store, Nasitica. Is that where they got the clothes from? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah.
Right. So you borrowed clothes.
They borrowed the clothes, yeah.
And that was nice.
You went back to the Haight Street, under the Haight Street sign, there's a Mustang convertible, and that was Peggy Casser's car.
Nice. Nowadays, if a clothing store gave you pictures and you took a photo in front of their store, they'd say, just post it on Instagram and we'll be even.
Yeah.
But back then, Instagram was a science fiction fantasy. Phil,
to interrupt real quick. Herb, are you able to possibly move a little bit closer to the microphone, please?
How's that? Better?
Yeah, I think that's.
Let's see how this is for a bit.
Okay, and so we got Phil Lesh with the parking meter, and Jerry, Bob, and Phil goofing off. And this is just you guys walking around the Haight-Ashbury. I mean, if you really think about this, like these guys were just a local band. And, I could see in this shot here where they're in this doorway of 1481, you can see there's a music store right next door. So they're still on Haight. I also love how Garcia's hair is blowing. What most people don't know about San Francisco is that when we do photo shoots here, and I've done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of band photos around the Bay Area, is that the weather is always so unpredictable that it's virtually impossible to get a non-windy day in this city where people's hair is not just blowing around. So it's nice to get a little alcove here into like somebody's front porch. Pigpen in the same little area there, just going down the stairs. I just love how casual all of this stuff is. Hey, Pig, stand here for a second. Oh, let's go over to Volunteers of America, which, I always wondered if that store, you were telling me that it was just like a thrift store, hippie thrift store, like was Volunteers of America. Is that where they got the line in the Jefferson Airplane, for the Jefferson Airplane, being on Haight Street. And I love the irony of the shot of Pig in front of the prescriptions drugstore sign. And also just love that, this shot here, available light, shallow depth of field, that prescriptions sign is just slowly drifting out of focus. I mean, to me, this is like art, right? This is a beautiful, fine art photograph of this legendary musician who died way too young. And it's all just so casual with these guys, hanging out. Oh, here's Bill the drummer with Pigpen in the background. Are you going through these photos, Will, while I'm calling these out? And then you get to the hieroglyphics wall, right? So we've seen all of the walking around shots from Haight Street, going through all of those, Pigpen, the prescriptions, Billy, and then we get to the hieroglyphics wall. Tell me about this apartment. Tell me about the hieroglyphics. How did they get there? Where was the apartment? Who came up to this apartment? Tell me about what's going on here.
It was on Baker Street. We shared it with a couple of people, and one of the kids was taking a class in Egyptology at State, and I took the wallpaper off the wall, and I left that wonderful patina. I came home one day and he had put the graffiti on it. I wanted to kill him. But as it turned out, it all worked out. I mean, it's a kind of iconic thing. And Airplane used it, effectively on their pillow cover. Yeah.
And I think we'll show that photo later. I think I have that one. Yeah, I have that one hanging on my wall. I've got I've got the surrealistic pillow cover of yours hanging on my wall. I've got your Neal Cassady portrait. I got the New Riders portrait, which we'll see later. So here's a series of portraits of the hieroglyphic wall. And you got so many great bands. And I love these little pairings here. You got Phil, Bob, and Billy. Again, this is in the 66. Was this Baker Street apartment on the other side of the Panhandle, or was it on the Haight Street side of the Panhandle?
On the north side,
Right, other side of the Panhandle.
near Balboa.
When I first came to California, I came out in 1979 to see the Grateful Dead at the Kaiser, which at the time was the Oakland Auditorium Arena. The next summer, in the summer of 1980, I came out, and we had these Deadhead friends staying in an apartment on Baker Street. They lived on Baker. I was staying on Haight and Masonic. And we had this big party, I think, the first day that I got there, and everybody was just tripping their brains out. And I remember we were sitting on the couch in the front room, and the big window was open right there. And we're all just sitting there. And all of a sudden, this guy comes running through the living room and just jumps out the window out onto the street. It was the first floor, but it was still 10 or 12 feet up. And everybody just like looked and was like, wait, what did some guy just jump out the window? And then he was gone. He just kept running. I think that he probably was still tripping from Olompali in 66. But anyway, so I've spent some good time on Baker Street myself, over probably right where your apartment was. Here's the next one of Jerry and Phil. It looks like Phil's holding some sort of Mexican voodoo icon doll. And I mean, Phil and Garcia had such a great relationship. And also you and I were talking about this a couple days ago. I mean, you and Phil had such a great relationship. I mean, Phil has so many of your photographs hanging up in Terrapin Crossroads. And I could just really see the bond between you guys, between so many of your photos. Here's this one of him and Jerry. I believe you said this was them sitting downstairs in the 710A Danny Rifkin apartment. I mean, were you just like on a Tuesday afternoon, you would just walk over to 710 Ashbury and have your camera, maybe take a couple of shots and then leave and socialize and smoke a joint? And
Yeah, the odd thing would be that I had a camera with me, because I didn't really carry a camera, and still never did.
So when Herbie showed up with a camera, it wasn't like you were invading their space, because it was rare. Like you were hanging, like Marshall, or anybody, Baron Woolman, anybody with a 35mm camera. If they were around these guys, they were click, 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 click. But you're hanging out there, and you got your 2 1/4, which is typically on a tripod. So it's a little bit more intentional if you're going to maybe take even a couple of shots than just, hey, let me get a couple shots. It's like you're really thinking about this.
Yeah.
And then I love this shot of Phil with the binoculars looking out the window. Like, Phil is such a prankster always. And I mean, I've done so many photo shoots with Phil over the years. And I would say that out of all the band members, him and Kreutzmann have the most pranksternish side to them. And, always goofing off and always pushing the buttons of the photographer.
Well, they're all just rush you. I mean, early, when I'm doing the sittings much later, they would just rush you. Hurry up, my mother could do this faster, stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. Let's see here. So this photograph here, this is a group portrait that's got everybody in it. It's got Mickey in it. It's got TC in it, Pigpen. I guess they hired you to do this right when TC joined the band. So this has got to be 68 or 69.
69, and what happened was I had Led Zeppelin in the studio. And I get a call, and it's them, they're downstairs. We've got a new band member, we need a picture. I said, well, I'm kind of busy. And so they came up and sat down in this big barn of a place, and while I was working with Zeppelin, and this is back when people were carrying firearms for laughs. And Pickman had a little revolver, and he was shooting it off in the room. Flipped Zeppelin out really badly. I thought, this is going to be fun. It'll be hands across the sea, and it'll be social. It'll be fun.
So you were in this studio. This is a warehouse that was owned by a filmmaker named Ben Van Meter. So you were in this warehouse doing your famous portrait of Led Zeppelin when the Grateful Dead showed up and said, we need a new picture.
Just showed up. It's 35, you'll know, because I had gone through all the 4x5.
Right. So you shot it in 35 millimeter, which is rare for you.
It's a really nice shot too.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So we'll see those Led Zeppelin photos in a bit here. So this is an available light, window light situation. And again, this photo is like iconic because it's one of the few photos. I don't know if there's any other photographer out there that has a picture that has this complete lineup in it. I think this is the only photo.
Never thought of that.
Yeah, I know.
Got Pig and Constantin. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mickey.
Right. And then here's the shot of them in the barber chair. And I always thought this was a barber shop, but it wasn't. What was the deal with this here?
It was a sandal maker shop.
And what was
people both had it. And I've forgotten the name of it.
Was it on Haight Street or was it somewhere else?
On Haight Street, right next door to Nasitica.
Right. And you just were like, hey, we need this space and come in and we're going to do a photo. I mean, I've only seen this shot in black and white and color. Are those the only shots you did that day, or did you guys walk around anywhere else? You just like, hey, let's come in here and do a quick shot.
And we're done. Got it.
Right.
Well, you don't have all the time constraints. Even back then it was a lot easier because we had more time to deal with stuff. And but when I was doing like Led Zeppelin and later in other bands, you had very limited amount of time. There was people were coming in off the road. They didn't want to be there. And so when we get to the Zeppelin pictures, it'll become obvious. I tried to do a portrait of each guy and a group shot. And we're shooting 4 or 5, so we'd be like 5 images of each person.
Right.
Group. So, and again, the people that had time, some of the time, so like Marshall did this a lot. I spent the day with Rod Stewart and Jeff Beck. We had went to Chinatown and had lunch, stuff like that. But later on, when we got into the bigger studio where we did Sly and the Pointer Sisters and all that stuff, we'd serve a buffet before we shot. Get a ham or turkey or whatever and wine and have because everybody wanted to eat because nobody did. And so that worked out pretty well till I got to Santana.
Right.
And I was the only guy drinking. And it was the first time I used the RB67.
Uh-huh.
So they weren't happy with me. But it wasn't up to the spiritual,
So this next photograph here, I always love this photograph. This is so iconic again. It's the color shot. Phil's lying on the ground with a pistol. Mickey's got a big giant Bowie knife. Pig's got his gun. Weir's got the rifle. Kreutzmann's not in the shot. And there's a bunch of hippies. I think this was up at Mickey's ranch in Novato. I mean, I love the playful side of these things, but was the real ammunition? Were you guys shooting real bullets at cans?
They would fire those high-powered rifles off across the valley. It was just totally irresponsible. They say Rosie's in here.
Rosie McGee in the white shirt, yeah.
And then I'm not sure what was going on that day because I don't know why all those people were there.
Right.
It must have been a minor gathering or something.
I've never seen any other photos from this event except for this one. So, and so I don't know if there's more or less or whatever, but always intrigued by this photo. And I love that it was in color and love what Phil's wearing. I mean, just, Garcia in that poncho, again, just like one of those iconic Grateful Dead moments that.
What the poncho he wore on Playboy After Hours?
Oh, sure.
I think it is.
Right, where they dosed the coffee and dosed everybody that was on the Playboy staff. So here's this great portrait of Pigpen. So we got a couple of portraits here all in a row. Pigpen, we got Weir, we got Billy and Mickey. All 3 of these portraits were shot with the 4x5 camera. Again, this is not an easy task to do portraits, right? Your depth of field is incredibly minimal, which means that if somebody moves a couple of inches in either direction, they're completely out of focus. They have to sit very, very still. You got the cloth over your head, you focus, then you close your lens down, you put the film in, you pull the dark slide out, you click the shutter, you put the dark slide back in, you take the film out, you refocus. Every single photograph, every frame takes 1 or 2 minutes to take one picture. and this is a band that's giving you 5 minutes, and you did it with Led Zeppelin. I've done this with bands. I know how difficult it is to shoot 4x5 film, doing portraits. So I just have to just hand it to you and give you big kudos for like getting these guys to sit still long enough and to be in focus and to shoot color film and to get these brilliant, beautiful 4x5 portraits.
Well, they paid attention to you. They knew you were working. So it was easy, because you had to stare at the guy with the black hood over his head and fussing around with the knobs and stuff. And, this isn't like a motorized Nikon. It's like they pay attention to you. And once you got shooting, it wasn't taking many shots. You would turn it and do another one. And, so you had a stack of holders beside you and you feed them in once you got it focused. And once you got it focused, then pretty much people stayed in. But these are like long exposures too.
Right.
So that makes people, focus.
Right. These are like a half a second or an eighth of a second.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Which is a long exposure, but they're sharp and they're beautiful. Always loved all of those. And then we get to Captain Trips. Such an iconic photo of Garcia. That hat was in the Summer of Love exhibit here in Golden Gate Park. I don't know who owns the hat, but
I did. I could have asked for it,
Right. Yeah. And where was this? Do you remember where this was taken?
Taken up Gene at Esterboo Studio on Buena Vista West. He's a really good friend of mine, and his wife. Well, at any rate, they had a recording studio on the top floor of what was the Freckles mansion, and it faced out to the Pacific and out to the Golden Gate. It was pretty neat from different windows. The same as Phil binoculars, he's looking out the window. And so we, just we were doing this for a record cover again. And then they went to Warner Brothers. Gene did Stealing and Don't Ease Me In. It had a very small, high quality recording studio. And I got the whole band. Well, and then Kelly turned it into the collage for the first record. And
Got it. Okay.
When I saw it, I went up and kissed him on the cheek. And anyway, I didn't mean anything by it other than I love Kelly, and I still do. Kelly. There's so many. It's Jerry Slick passed today.
Today?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Grace's first husband.
Grace's first husband.
Oh, wow. Was Jerry in the Great Society?
Yeah, he drummed.
Right. We'll get to a picture of them soon. The big American flag in 710. Is this Garcia's bedroom?
No, it was just a front room. This is a really good shot. It's going to be the cover of my book if I ever do one. I call it American View, American Beauty.
So this is not in 710 Ashbury.
Yeah.
Oh, it is. Okay, I always thought, because I've seen Gene Anthony photos from 710 with a flag, so I always thought it was the same place. Yeah. And then here's another iconic photograph. Now we're into like 1970, I want to say, and here is the Grateful Dead and the New Riders up at Mickey's Ranch with the big American flag. So obviously, when they moved out of 710, Mickey got the flag and brought it up to his house, his new ranch in Nevada.
Oh, that's not the same flag.
Really? You don't think so?
No, it can't be. This leg's in tatters and it has that funny border on it.
Yeah. All right. Anyway,
the flag.
Anyway,
We'll burn it.
Was this done specifically as a shoot for any promotional stuff, or was just like, hey, we're all hanging out and we're all here, let's do a shot?
We did it for Christmas card.
Got it.
And there's it's funny because I got a call from Rhino and they're doing a 70 something thing, and they're going to use this stuff and they want to see the rest of the images. And there are a lot of them. They're like with the whole crew, the family and the office people, and then there's some that are actually just the band. And behind Weir here is Torbett, but you can't see him.
Oh yeah, I was wondering. I could see there's a person there. I was wondering.
That's Torbett.
Right.
I thought it was a horse, or it's Poppy's here. Anyway, that's the way things go.
Pigpen with the violin. again, and the steel guitars in the background, there was always something to me that was magical about this particular photograph, because Pig probably didn't play violin. But there was just something that made this so, I don't know, the Kansas 69, the TV, the keyboard in the background, everything. There was just so much going on in this photo for me. And I own a print of this one also, I believe. I love this. I love this shot because it's just so gentle. Pigpen holding that violin. Any particular story behind it?
No, but I think I was using strobes.
Oh, interesting.
There's a strobe behind his head.
Oh, I can see that. Okay. I never knew that's what that was. Okay.
I don't know if the front fill is from the window or what, but anyway, I don't know why I lugged that thing up there, but I did.
So this has got to be early 70s because
This is still on 710.
oh, really? Okay. Because he's so thin here. I thought maybe this is when he was starting to get sick, but maybe not. All right. So you were playing around with strobes in the 60s still.
Just minimally. I didn't, I don't know when I made that switch.
Right.
It was a big step forward.
Yeah.
No, because I used strobes when I worked at Josephine.
Right.
But before that, I only used window light. And you were talking about San Francisco weather. And the thing about the San Francisco weather is like it was always overcast.
Yeah.
It was always perfect. And I would never take a picture in the sun. Just wouldn't do it. You're just like, why bother? So
Yeah.
the rule was it has to be overcast.
Yeah, which is
or you get into open shade. And
yeah,
then
open shade's the best. Yeah.
and then you don't have that horrible scene brightness range.
Yeah, exactly. This is a mistake on my part. I left this Pigpen shot here in the car. This is supposed to be in the Olompali section, but we'll get to Olompali a little bit later. Sorry about that. Here's Garcia from 1978, I believe. And this was the cover of Rolling Stone magazine when Jerry died, right?
Yeah, 79. This is when Brent joined the band. I think it's
Okay, got it.
the same city.
Okay.
That was that was amazing. That whole thing. He said Brent died the day before. The network and the Deadhead network was so much. They were like a second behind reality. I mean, they say stuff. Well, Haley got fired. I was in a nursery in the bottom and said, Haley got fired. Some guy walked up to me I've never seen. I said, no way. That was true. So the Deadheads always had, they always kept on top. Yeah, this is good. This is when I was about to hit a bottom with the social lubricant.
Got it.
And Garcia was so we're doing this, and that Jerry and I, when you see each other and do a picture of camera stuff, you pick up the conversation where you left it, which sounds great, but a lot of people do that. I said, women, I said, they're driving me to drink. And he said, they're driving me to dope. And that was the first time I got a clear message that, there was that stuff going on.
Coming into the camp, right.
And this is a really dark thing. It's a descent to hell in my mind. I ended up in AA the next day and he was off to rehab, again.
Is there a reason why you didn't do a lot of work with the band between 1970 and 79?
Yeah, they didn't hire me.
Okay.
There was a rotation and I wasn't really, I was doing Sly and the Pointers and Can Heat and Chicago and stuff like that, moving back and forth to LA and back. So I wasn't, there was, and it wasn't my turn,
Right.
It kind of had a rotation.
Right.
And I went to shows and stuff, but they didn't, it wasn't my turn, so I don't have any Keith and Donna.
In portraits, right.
I don't have Keith and Donna. So the whole thing, is based on, I call it brief encounters with the dead, because I'm sitting here, a pretty well-known guy in this community, and that's all based on 4 or 5 sittings over a 30-year period.
Right.
You know, so that I was telling Koch, I said, nobody has ever done so much with so little in photography.
So, all right. So then we get to the band portrait from that same session with Garcia, and we got Brent, and this is the Here's Brent photo, right?
I'm called Hello Brent.
Hello, Brent.
Just look at him. Brent, the sad guy. That was sad. All that was sad.
And I remember when I first saw these photographs, you know, again, there's so much pranksternish involved in this. Like, why is Phil wearing ski goggles on his forehead? He's doing it only because he's fucking with the photographer. Like, you know, there's no fashion sense for that. He's like, oh, ski goggles, let me put them on because that'll, you know, anything to like fuck with the photographer. Like, that's what these guys, Kreutzmann and Phil, are just always pranksters.
Oh, they were just trying to help.
Yeah.
Bless his heart.
And then this portrait of Brent is from the same day also. And, you know, I took an early shot of Brent when he just joined the band in '79. Had a brief encounter with him at a No Nukes rally in Washington, D.C. But I think that, you know, my shot and this shot here were really some of the first shots that the, you know, Deadhead saw of, you know, who Brent Midland was. I mean, when I went to those first shows with Brent on the East Coast in '79, people were like, who's the new keyboard player that looks like Greg Allman? Like, nobody knew anybody's names, you know? I mean, there was no social media. There was none of that. So, you know, it was putting a face. Here's Dylan and the Dead, another iconic photograph taken in 1987. When we were talking the other day, you sent me a link to a video of you getting ready, of you doing this portrait session. Dylan's not in the room yet. It's just the Grateful Dead are in there. And I mean, I think in the 3 or 4 minute video that, and Justin Kreutzmann is who shot it, Billy's son, who's a, you know, dear friend and fabulous filmmaker. So what's that?
You don't have the video?
No, I didn't put it into the program. No. But you guys can find it on YouTube very easily afterwards. I forgot to put the link in there. I think if you just search Herbie Green, Grateful Dead shoot, it'll come up pretty easily afterwards. But the thing that's interesting is this 3 or 4 minute video. And I think you take 3 photos the entire time because all they're doing is goofing off, right? They're sort of, you know, and you're waiting for and there's 3 or 4 photographs are the only 3 or 4 moments where they're actually paying attention to you for a split second. You know, and it's just so classic of them to say, okay, Herbie, you have 5 minutes, but for 4 minutes of those 5 minutes, we're going to just fuck around and not give you the shot, you know? And I've seen that happen with me, you know, working with these guys. And so I feel your pain in that. Talk to me a little bit about that shoot with Dylan and what it was like hanging out with Dylan.
What the thing about that, what you're talking about, you need one is my motto. You only need one, and the rest of them throw away. So they can go through all that stuff. Yeah, and it was chaotic. They were so hyped up at the time because In the Dark was coming out or had been out. You know, that Garcia just had come out of the coma. They were broke. The old Minerline Productions, a ton of money, and everybody's happy that Jerry was alive, you know. And Dylan thing, I'm not sure. Bill Graham must have done that. I mean, got that idea. I got to go to all the rehearsals, which was just wonderful experience. At the time, you know, you have them too when you get to be around something in a band or, you know, or a musician. It's magic. And the rehearsals were amazing. They were just amazing. Dylan didn't really talk to anybody. He just kind of kept to himself, and when they weren't playing. But as soon as they got you know, to the microphones and stuff, and it was just and they switched off the instruments a lot. So Jerry would be playing. There was a pedal there. There was mandolins. There was a whole, you know, range of stuff, and it was great.
But Dylan just didn't even talk to the band or the crew. He would just go and sit in the corner and have coffee by himself or whatever.
He went over to the coffee table and he get the sugar. You know, it took a minute, 2 minutes to make a cup of coffee. Yeah, but he didn't hang out with Jerry, you know, you'd think he would. But that's, and so anyway, when we finally got down to finalizing the, you know, when I got the imagery that I got, which was 2 rolls of 220, I proofed them all, and I didn't think I had a picture. You know, it was just like, oh my God, because Nicky would have drumsticks up his nose, and yeah, it was just, and there was this mob of people behind us. This is between sets. And there'd be this mob of people behind us with this din and roar coming from behind me. And I went through the first roll, and I walked over and I touched Dylan's knee, and then went back and like that. But it was, the next one was the first picture on the second roll. And there you go.
And you got your shot. And,
Yeah, and this is strobe, so you know, like that's laying down at the 1,000th of a second, say, or 1,200, whatever it is. So between the natural light portraits, which took, this is like
right.
that, you know, and it's funny because it burns into your retina, and you know you got it. It's really just fun. It's nasty.
And you didn't shoot any color of the Dylan session, just 2 rolls of black and white, 20 shots, 40 shots, 20 on each.
Back here, 2 rolls.
Right.
220. Yeah.
Right.
Handheld it. It was an interesting, but the whole thing was hard. And I hadn't worked with a band for 6 years when I did this. I just got called out of obscurity. I lost track of the music business when the punk rock thing came, and I didn't, you know, really fit in. What makes a guy work out with a band and stuff is he's part of that family, like you are and I am. And but you know, the punk rockers didn't want anything to do with me. And hip hop guys, they wanted to work with fashion model, you know, fashion photographer. So, but I ran out of clientele real quick. And there you go. And
that's when you were working at Faulkner. And I didn't talk about this earlier, but in the early 90s, Herbie and I did a group show together called Rock in the 60s, Roll in the 90s. And we did like matching portraits. So portraits he did of like Paul Kantner in the 60s, next to a portrait I did of Paul Kantner in the 90s, and Peter Alvin from Big Brother in the 60s, and Jerry Garcia and Bob Weir and Quicksilver. And I think we had, I think we had around 10 matching portraits. Rock in the 60s, Roll in the 90s. That was the name you came up with. And we did that show at the Faulkner Gallery, where you worked also, and which was right around the corner from my studio of a couple of years later. I had a studio on Clementina right behind that. So
beautiful building.
Yeah.
I did pre-camera or pre-press work there. Had a really nice position where I could nap a lot.
I remember that room you worked in, that big 8x10 camera or 4x5 camera.
Yeah, I was good at that. Before scanning and stuff, well, the scan, you had to have the transparency. So if a painting came through, you had to photograph it.
Right.
And you got the painting behind me is a monotype by Gary Kovnick, and I did all of his stuff, and there's a couple of books. But it was, it was good for me to do it.
Right. Let's move on here. We got Robert Hunter and Barlow, John Perry Barlow. This is a showdown. What do you want to say? What do you want to say about Hunter and Barlow?
They're 2 different people. They're 2 different guys. A few conversations I have with Hunter. He went on one case on Triad about how he resented Barlow, poaching on his territory. That's where he didn't like. He didn't want to share the stage. And he, I don't know if you know, he's the kind of funny guy that way. And John Perry Barlow, God, is just a saint. Not. If you didn't go going somewhere, I don't want to go here. Anyway, Hunter had this attitude about it's just him, and he didn't like the idea that Bob was working with Barlow, and they were actually playing the songs on the shows and stuff.
Funny.
Silly. Yeah, silly.
And then we have a couple of portraits here. We'll move on of Garcia and Lesh.
I love these guys.
I love the Phil Jerry connection. These were fun. These were done up at Front Street, I believe you said. Didn't you paint the wall white and then the paint didn't dry and they were all sticking to the floor when you painted it?
We were talking about seamless. I used big wide walls and then built studios. You had like the wall was like 18 feet wide in both places. And in Front Street, there was a wall that I refinished, did the drywall work and then painted it and then painted the floor in front of it. This was to do the in the dark shot, the publicity shot or whatever. So I got it all done, and the next day I came back up. So let's do a test shot. So I said, yeah, well, the paint was stuff. Anyway, there was no sitting after the test shot. What I got was what we used. I thought it was a great bunch of portraits. The in the dark thing, we haven't got the movie, so we haven't any. I was approached. My rotation came around, and they hired me to do portraits. And I started with Bob because this is when Jerry went into diabetic coma, so I couldn't, so I started with Bob, and then it turned into portrait sitting, turned into the in the dark stuff that was on the inside, which is all those nice backlit photos, which we don't have any of. And they said, "Bob, I want eyes on the cover, eyes." And so, okay. And I think he wanted like that French stuff, where it's just all eyes stacked up on each other. And I saw it as that. And they hated it. What can I say? Jerry said, I hate it. It makes me want to puke. And that's why on the LP, it's upside down.
Oh, right. All the eyes are upside down.
But when when I look at it now, that's a really good cover. And the whole package was really good because you open it up and there are those beautiful portraits and then you pulled the record sleeve out and it was that group shot we just saw.
Right. Amazing.
And then back was that, I wish we had this, that hideous mask. Do you recall this? On the back, there's a face and it's all eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, this is one of your magic critical stories. So we're in the room doing the eye pictures, and there's a knock on the door, and it's somebody. I'm a friend of Mickey's from way back, and she came in and she had a bag, and she pulled the bag out, and it had this mask in it with all these eyes on it. How can you not use that?
Wow. Right.
Not use that. Cutler hated it. Oh, but I thought it was great. The whole thing was a comic, graphic novel kind of approach. And when I explained that to Garcia, he said, "Oh, I like that now." But the eye thing was the eyes inside the mask are Mickey's eyes, and then on the outside, the other eye is Bill Graham. He loved me for that, and Bill Walton didn't want to be the other eye. So Bill did it.
I remember, always knew that it was Bill Graham. Yeah.
But when I took the proof in to the office, the girls in the office couldn't put the names on the eyes.
Oh, funny.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Here we're going to look at a couple of shots of some guitars. You photographed a lot of instruments for the band. This is one of the last guitars that Garcia played, which was called Top Hat, I guess. Here's a detail shot of the headstock with the firecracker. Here's the top hat, and here's the full length shot. Go back to the firecracker shot on the headstock, Will. What's the firecracker story?
So the guy that made the guitars made fireworks also. That was his hobby, whatever. And he blew himself up.
Oh, and he died, right? Jeff Kripe.
Yeah, he blew himself up. And Garcia was I walked up to Jerry and I said, "Gee, you're playing that guitar now?" He said, "Yeah, I had to sitting. The guy sent this to me, and I just set it in the corner. And I was walking by it the other day, and I started talking to it."
Okay, so there you go. The firecrackers went off.
One of those stories,
Yeah, and then of course we got the Wolf guitar, which is just so iconic. Wolf has been out and about. I don't know if you know this, but John Mayer played it in New York City last summer with Dead & Co., which was a phenomenal experience. And of course, here's Rosebud, close up of Rosebud, and then here's Garcia from the In the Dark photo session you were talking about, and he's holding the Tiger guitar here. Again, love this. This is just such an iconic portrait of Jerry that, for me, just so defined Garcia during the whole Touch of Grey period. I mean, you saw this photo everywhere of Garcia because it was just truly, the band exploded.
He loved this one. It was my Star Trek lighting.
Yeah, with the hair light in the back. Yeah,
there's a red catch light on it too, and I can't see it here, but there's some red light hitting it too.
I always knew about the red light over on the side there. And then here's something that's kind of fun. These are the blotter acid sheets with Captain Trips on them. There's 2 variations of them. And I think you can find these on Herbie's website at herbgreenphoto.com.
This is the shameless commerce section of this presentation.
But we're nowhere near done. So that's just this.
At any rate.
And so, I always loved this poster from the Grateful Dead Lightning Hopkins Loading Zone show at the Fillmore. Was it a big thrill to see your photographs like this used on posters back?
Oh, yeah.
Did they pay you? Do you remember? Did you get $5? No.
The artist, you just give it to them.
Right. Yeah. I love when my photos are on posters. Last summer, I think it was, Roger McNamee and his group of people in Moon Alice, they did a Summer of Love show with Lebo and all these great musicians. And the big poster for that Summer of Love show in Golden Gate Park last summer, they used one of my photos of a hippie chick dancing. Alex Fisher was the poster artist. She's a great poster artist and a dear friend of mine. And she asked me for that photo. And I love that. I've had a handful of my photos on posters over the years. I don't know, maybe 2, 3, 4, or 5 times, but it is still a thrill to have that happen. And then we get to the Charlatans posters. I mean, again, this is such a defining piece of artwork from the 1960s, the Charlatans at the Avalon Ballroom. And I didn't know this until you told me this the other day, that these are 3 posters done by 3 different poster artists. And, you can look at the shows. There's a series of shows in May, June, and July. So it's over 3 months, but it was thought about in advance with the Charlatans up top like that, where you see the name of the band going across. And of course, these posters are made with 3 of your iconic photos of the Charlatans. And a lot of people, if you don't know who the Charlatans were, they were the first psychedelic band in the Haight-Ashbury.
They were my favorite boys.
I mean, the way they dressed and the way they looked. And so let me show the portraits, Herbie, and then I want to hear the story. But, if you go down, so here's the one of Dan Hicks and Mike Wilhelm. And then this is George Hunter and Ferguson. Oh, no, that's Richard Olson and George Hunter with those hats, and then Mike Ferguson, and these guys dressed in these Victorian clothes, and they turned into these posters. Tell me a little bit about the Charlatans.
Well, the clothing, start with the posters. George conceived this over over a period of time, so this is what I'm going to do, which is real. George is a bit of a genius. At any rate, it didn't work out too well because if you see on the final poster, there's a big glaring mistake on the border of cans. So anyway, George envisioned this, and he never could. He had a hard time describing it to me. But if he would have said triptych, I would have got it because I like triptychs. Anyway, so yeah, it's a great poster. There you go.
And then here's the Charlatans in a band publicity photo. Again, these guys are the best dressed people in the Haight-Ashbury.
Yeah. They weren't giving God credit, which I don't think of them that way, but they had a really good songbook. They had, you had Dan Hicks, can't beat that. And you had Wilhelm, an incredible guitar player. Ferguson did Mose Allison, and George crooned. You know.
Yeah, was
But
such a,
Alabama, was it not Alabama Getaway? Alabama Bound was a monster, you know. But they just kept stepping on their own feet.
Yeah.
The Charlatan stories are endless. Bill Graham thought I managed them. But they come to get a gig. I walk into the office and my wife at the time was Marissa, was the secretary, and he'd say, "Who shall I get for the opening act?" I say, "Charlatan."
Perfect.
They do stuff. They do stuff like like show up late for the second set because Ferguson spilled barbecue sauce on his white pants and stuff like that. It was just endless. And they played at a topless club. The place that had the girl in the swing.
Uh-huh.
Well,
That was the Condor?
no, it's a voice from that. But anyway, they played that for like a couple of months and got really well rehearsed. And Eric Jacobson produced a record for them that didn't go anywhere. But they should have been something.
Yeah.
And
Eric Jacobson later went on to produce a bunch of Chris Isaak records.
precisely, he did Loving Spoonful.
Uh-huh.
He did Spirit in the Sky,
Norman Greenbaum.
which has got to be. I think you hear it's like White Rabbit. I mean, you can't get away from Spirit in the Sky. It's everywhere.
It's funny.
Commercials,
at the
shows. It's on.
The 20th anniversary of Woodstock, I got hired by Rolling Stone magazine to do a portrait of Country Joe. You know, where are they now? And they wanted me to do Norman Greenbaum, but nobody could find him. He lives in Sonoma, and he was like a recluse for many years. But now he's out all the time. He's singing on stage. We see Norman Greenbaum show up at all these events here in San Francisco all the time.
Artistas and stuff, and you see him on Facebook a lot.
Yeah, but that, you know, in '89 he was nowhere to be found. You know, didn't want anything to do with you know that whole series. Anyway, so let's keep moving on.
At any rate, Spirit in the Sky is like, oh my God, that's just amazing. That was the first. Derek used a synthesizer on some of that. It was the first time anybody had used a synthesizer. But he says you don't know which part it is, and I still don't know which part.
Well, I'll have to go and listen and see if I can figure it out. Quicksilver Messenger Service, the original Quicksilver with Cipollina and Freiberg and Gary Duncan, etc. Big Brother and the Holding Company, Janis.
I wonder. This is a wonderful portrait.
I always love that shot. You know,
she and James, they love.
I mean, this band was so iconic, but it really only lasted 2 years before she went on to do the Cosmic Blues Band or whatever the next.
Big Brother got a bum rap. They said that that sound was incredible. Their sound, it was just like. And the people, back when the bands got to the big studios in New York, the producers say, well, you guys, you can't keep it in tune, and they'll fire the piano player, we'll get our, stuff like that. So Big Brother, that's an incredible sound. It just gives me shivers every time I hear it.
Yeah. And then there's the portrait of Janis with the top hat on, which I think was a part of a big family dog photo that you were doing of all the family dog people.
Yeah, Jan. I think that was the first time I met her. And I was in the living room here on Pine Street. And I was on the living room, and she walked in and said, honey, how can I do? I said, well, Janice, maybe you put on just a little makeup. And she said, honey, I already did. Yeah, great.
And here's
she's just wonderful, though. I mean, knowing Janice, God.
I'm sure. I can't even imagine. I mean, I just can't even imagine. Here's a series of portraits back at your apartment on Baker Street with the hieroglyphics. So this is the Great Society. That's Grace Slick. And then I think you said just 2 weeks later, she left the Great Society, took White Rabbit and Somebody to Love to her new band, the Jefferson Airplane. This is
or it was a week between her. She's wearing the same clothes.
In the next vote. Yeah, great. And then here's the Airplane, this is the Surrealistic Pillow album cover, the airplane in front of the hieroglyphics wall.
That was a break for me.
Was that one of your first big album covers?
Oh, yeah. Right. Album covers were great. Getting to do record covers was what we're all about.
Now, were you hired to shoot this as an album cover, or did you shoot it and then they picked it up?
This is a PR shot.
It was a PR shot that ended up as an album cover.
And Marty did it.
Right.
Bless you, Marty. Oh, Susan Joy Ballin, hello.
Love the,
A
I
lot
love,
of shout outs to make today. A lot of,
love the instruments, the banjo and the French horn, and Grace looks like she's holding a broomstick. I mean, just.
That's a recorder. She plays
I was
recorder.
playing, it's a recorder. I always wondered what she was holding.
Coming
Cam-
back to me, the introduction is, I'm pretty sure, is recorded.
Right. Here's Paul Kantner solo from that same session, that same day. Bill Graham. Here's the legendary Bill Graham at the hieroglyphics wall. What was your relationship like with Bill? And was it always good? Did it ever go bad? Bill had a very, Bill and Jim Marshall had a love-hate relationship. A lot of yelling and screaming. What was your relationship with Bill Graham like?
Real good. My ex-wife, Marushka, who later became Grateful Dead tour accountant, and before that was the New Rider tour person and married Nelson. Anyway, so I got to know Bill pretty well. But I know Bill as a Mean Troupe, I think.
Uh-huh.
He produced some stuff, but at any rate, oh yeah, because he was doing something, they were doing the minstrel show at, this is pretty academic, the minstrel show at the Mean Troupe, and Marushka made costumes. And Bill was managing the Mean Troupe. And that's how I met him. And then Bill decided it'd be great to put on a concert or, dance hall thing. And that's how that all started with Bill Graham, put on this thing. And so I saw Bill every day, basically. And he had, he was, decorated war veteran and swam the Atlantic to get away from the Nazis. And how he put up with us is beyond me. But he loved the music, and he loved, particularly loved Garcia. But
Yeah.
he was a bully. He loud and screamed and yelled at the kosher canon with the phone. It's pretty good. And he always took, when he found out we didn't have health insurance, he made sure that also everybody's going to get health insurance and stuff. So he was, doing that. And he was incredibly detail oriented and big heart. Loved him.
Excellent.
He screamed at me, I screamed at him. It was once in the hallway. So, you got to be able to do that. But he was physical too. So he'd do Hell's Angel down the stairs and stuff. He was fearless.
Yeah.
Physical, very physical guy.
If you escape the Nazis and get across Europe and end up in the United States and get adopted, and
but he was
pretty fearless.
A waiter in the Catskills.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he had this thing. He would cash people's checks. And so if it was for $59.75, he would keep the 75. And that's the way it was. It tells a story about he was sitting on the bay, and there's all these people going by looking for food, and they're bringing food. So he went out. He had Sister Esther make up a whole bunch of sandwiches, and he got a little rubber dinghy, loaded up the sandwiches, and went out into the bay and sold the sandwiches just like that. And then he fell asleep. And the next thing he knew, he said he was looking up and he saw the Golden Gate Bridge. And that Coast Guard had to haul him in.
Well, you know what one of the most famous Bill Graham quotes is? It's not about the money, it's about the money. Yeah. All right, so here we got a portrait of Steve Miller Band. I always love this photograph because everybody's so well dressed, and then Boz Scaggs over on the right side is not even wearing a shirt, I mean, look at what Steve Miller's wearing. He's got his shirt and his vest shirt and his beads, and the other guy in the hat. And then Boz Scaggs is just like naked from the waist up. And then here's the solo portrait of Steve wearing the same clothes. So I'm guessing it's from the same day. Now we get to the famous Led Zeppelin session you talked about earlier. So I learned something new today, that you were doing this session with Led Zeppelin. You were up in the warehouse that Ben Van Meter, the filmmaker, we'll see a picture of Ben later. This was Ben's studio that you used. And I I just love this. Always loved this portrait of Led Zeppelin with around the window with the band looking out. And then, of course, there's the solo portraits of Jimmy Page, John Paul Jones, Bonham, and Robert Plant. And they're all shot with 4x5 film. They're just beautiful, beautiful window light. I mean, they're just so pretty, these portraits. I've always loved these. And I think this is all part of your British series. After Robert Plant, we have this incredible portrait of Rod Stewart. I mean, this look on his face, and I think this is one of your favorite shots also. I mean, anything you want to say about Zeppelin or Rod Stewart while we're right here?
Well, since we're on the subject, Bill Graham got me these jobs.
And were they for a specific reason, or just he set them up and said, "Hey, you got to work with this photographer"?
Peter Grant said we need pictures, and Bill made sure I did it.
I mean, beautiful. And so you're at the warehouse with the Grateful Dead. I mean, with Led Zeppelin and the Grateful Dead knock on the door. We talked about that earlier. Ron Wood, after Rod Stewart, he was in Rod Stewart's band. Is that correct?
Yeah, I play bass.
And then Jeff Beck was also in the band.
Jeff Beck band.
Right. I mean, this portrait of Jeff Beck.
Jeff Beck.
I mean, this photo could have been taken in the This photo could have been taken in the 1940s, the 50s, the 60s. It's incredible.
You know, John, and again, it's Jeff Beck. I mean, God, there's nobody better, you know?
Right.
It's just scary. I was so naive or not uninformed at the time, because I didn't realize that these guys were all Yardbirds. It didn't on me at the time.
Didn't compute, yeah. Here's the New Riders up in Lake Nicasio on the dry lake bed. I always wanted to do a photograph of any band anywhere on a dry lake bed that was cracked like this from a drought. I came close once. The lead singer in the band Smash Mouth, I went out to the desert in Las Vegas. It didn't look quite like this, but it was a little bit cracked. And funny story, we're shooting him and he had this 4-wheel drive Jeep Toyota Land Cruiser with no roof but a roll bar, and he was doing donuts in circles and he flipped the car over. If he didn't have the roll bar cage, he would have killed himself. But it was one of those crazy things. But I just love this. The what they're wearing, is this the band bringing this, or is this you bringing?
No, I had a stylist.
So you set this up.
The stylist. Now this is where you need the 4x5 and the super angle on lens. So you can pull the foreground into focus.
Right.
And that with the Pointer Sisters too. Took their feet out of focus. Nice.
I mean, this is just amazing. The New Riders right out of the Civil War. I mean, it's just incredible.
Nelson.
Yeah.
He looks perfect.
Yeah.
Marmaduke. They're a bunch of guys. I love Dave Nelson. I gotta tell you.
And then this next shot here of the New Riders with the naked woman up in the little crawl space picture frame window. It's not a painting, not a photograph. That is a real naked woman up there. I have this hanging up here in my studio frames. Again, this looks like a movie set, but didn't you say this was a recording studio?
No, this is a really nice big studio. The white room had a big white room, you know, and this was a natural light room. There's the recording studio for American Beauty and
okay, got it. I misunderstood you.
It was like across the parking lot from me. I could look out my back door and see it.
So you built this whole set?
Yeah, it was a boss of it was a bomb of the studio. It was great. So you had we had a big main room where we had the buffet set up, and then there was a room adjoining that was all white floor, white walls, white ceiling, so I could bounce lights around in it and stuff. And then again, this is window light.
And now we get to the famous still life photograph. Let's talk about, like, I never knew the backstory of this until you told it to me yesterday, I think. And I just always like, oh, cool still life. So it's got a brick of weed in it. It's got a scale with some weed on it. It's got a little plant on it. It's got a little pill bottle with some Quaaludes or something falling out of it, or speed. It's got some tincture bottles, the gun, the candle. What is the story behind this photograph? Why did you create this? Who did you create it for? And what's the history over time with it?
I did it for Santana. Hang on a second.
All right, Herbie, going off script here for a moment.
Coming back.
I know.
I did it for Carl. Back then, to do record covers, you had to do them on speculation. If the record company, if a label hired you to do a cover, the band hated you for doing it. And if the band hired you, the label hated you. It was like, it wasn't easy. And so if you want to have a good idea for a record cover, you just mock it up. And this is how we used to do it. This is hand-cut rubylith and stuff.
Oh, okay, that's the ruby left. Got it. Yeah, the red.
This goes with the still life. This isn't the cover. It's called Mexican Medicine. I mean, there's all these great. This is San Miguel beer, and this is the graphics that they were using on the Muni at the time. And this is just, good old RX. So you open this up, and there'd be the still life. And Carlos said, "No, we're not Mexican. We're all Mexicans." I said, "Well, I'll call it Spanish guys." But so anyway, we got it. Really good gatefolds. Gatefolds are, you open up and there's a big picture. Those are really fine. So this still life is a gatefold. So CBS said, no, you can't do that. And then the airplane saw it, said, no, we want this. And RCA Victor said, no. And then the Dead said, we want it. And Warner Brothers said, no. So I was like, studying communications at State and stuff, where I ran into Ben Von Torres. I took classes with him, and I said, the map is not the territory, fellas, And so the thing sat around unused. And finally, Mark Herring got to use it because it's an independent. And just go and say hi to my good friend.
Nobody could say anything at that point.
So Mark,
So it's a beautiful photograph. And did you just set this up in your apartment or in a studio?
This is Mike Ferguson and I did this at his house.
Got it.
I got the gun came from Truman X. Jones, who I hope is watching. Truman. And the pipes were mine. I'm sorry I sold the Indian pipe. So sorry, then the Peruvian. So anyway, whatever. That's the story of that. It's a good story. I think high time for somebody use this for something.
Now we go to the Pointer Sisters. So this is the early 1970s. You're doing commercial work for record companies. This photograph could be taken in any decade from the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s. I mean, it's just such a beautiful, the lighting in it, the vibe, the wardrobe, the set you built, the wooden floor. I mean, everything about this photograph to me is just absolutely stunning. Tell me a little bit about working with the Pointer Sisters, how you got the gig, who it was for, and so on and so forth.
I got to work for David Rubinson a lot.
Another famous producer here in the Bay Area.
I did Moby Grape. He did Taj Mahal. He did Herbie Hancock. That's a pretty good range of artists. Guys, really good. So I was just around the corner from Fillmore Records, and so we started working in the Pointers, and we did. This is three sittings to get the clothes right, and we worked so hard on this, and they were so good about it, and it really paid off. So we're going to get the Grammy nomination for this one. Well, I didn't, but the next one I did. But the Pointers are great. I mean, you have the Pointers to sing "Happy Birthday" to you. You don't forget that. And they're.
And then the black and white portrait.
Fun. That was just huge fun. The Pointer Sisters. Again, we're so involved with it from beginning to end. It was every day in the office and every day at the studio and this and that. And we made David had a big poster made of this, a big poster, and it was in every place I went for, managers and people. They had it on the walls. Really got it around.
The next portrait of the Pointer Sisters, the black and white one, there's only 3. Is this a session a couple years later?
No, I just found out about that. But why there'd be 3 and 4. Because Anita Pointer just released a book, and that's the way it was. There's either 3 or 4, and they were separate. It was a separate kind of arrangement.
And they needed to have pictures both ways, right?
We always had pictures both ways.
All right, so let's go to Sly Stone. Love these 4x5s, this proof sheet here. You know, I think of Sly Stone personally as this very dark individual, right? And I look at all these portraits that you took of him where he's just so happy and so joyful. I mean, these 4 shots, he's got these big smiles. Here's the family Stone shot. They're all in this denim and they're all just, you know, again, these big smiles. Here's Sly jumping in the air against the white background. Then he lands on the ground. I'm going to have you talk about all of these. And then here's the proof sheet from that same session. And then the last shot that I have in here, he's got this drum on his back with the kick and the, you know, the accordion and the hat. Like he's just so happy in every one of these photographs. And I just think of him as, you know, I only got to see Sly Stone once in
Let's spend some time about Sly. I love Sly. I love Sly. Let's spend a little time.
So talk to me about tell me the story about the jumping shot.
I got a call from CBS, Ron Coral, the art director, and he said, we want you to do Sly, and we want you to do the whole package, the graphic and all. And I said, Sly Stone. Because the only thing you heard about Sly Stone was no shows. I mean, it wasn't ever good, you know. So I said, oh my Lord, what have I done? And he shows up, because he didn't be 3 weeks late. He showed up, looked like 5 minutes late. And I said, okay, this is good. He walks in the room, and I think he was bare-chested when he walked in. And walked in the room, I said, oh, it's good to meet you. And he was just like that. I mean, he's just wonderful. And it's like he had known you forever, you know, just, you know, none of that stuff. And I said, well, you know, that Richard Avedon picture, you're kicking in the air. I said, let's try to not do stuff like that. And the first thing he did was jump straight up into the air. Yeah. And I caught it at the top and then got him at the bottom. That's like, whoa. And then the rest of them, the jumping around stuff, you know, it's just like, it was so good. And that was like on a billboard on Sunset Strip, which I didn't take a picture of, and it was on Tower Records. There was one time at Tower, I had 3 covers on Tower, and I didn't take pictures. That's exactly Herbie Green, which is not Jim Marshall. Gans calls us the odd couple of rock photography. And then so later on, I'm sitting around in the studio, and I get this call. Herbie, I need some kisses. And it's like a voice from another planet. And I said, who is it? He said, Sly, I need some pictures. And I said, Sly, I know just what I'm going to do. Move to the drum set, the one-man band. I said, do you know what a one-man band is? He says, yeah. You know the guy with the drum on the back? He says, yeah. He says, that's what we're going to do. And he said, Herbie, you're a genius. So and then that doesn't happen very often. You get just hits you, you know. And so I said, well, I don't care what you wear particularly, Sly, but bring the top hat. He said, top hat? I said, you know, that top hat you wear. He said, top hat? He said, you've been in my closet? No. I said, top hat? How do you know I have a top hat? Well, I knew he had a top hat because he worked with the New Riders and Bob Johnson at the record plant in Sausalito, and he was wearing the top hat when he's playing piano or something. But he, you know, didn't put two things together, but it was hilarious. It was so much fun. And
that shot with the one-man band shot, that was an album cover also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did him for a cover. And then the group shot that went with it was, all the denim and stuff. But that was at his house in Sausalito or wherever it was. And I have a CBS would make dye transfers to covers. And they sent me a dye transfer of this and this.
And then also the jumping shot, the one where he's after he jumped and was down on the ground, that was used as an album cover for a box set. Recently. All right, let's talk about Rancho Olompali, right? So for those of you For those of you folks that don't know what Olompali is, it's a place the Grateful Dead live. So in February 1966, the Grateful Dead left the Haight-Ashbury and moved to Los Angeles. They were recording a record down there. Owsley was doing some stuff. Owsley rented a house. Upstairs in the attic of that house, Owsley was making copious amounts of LSD. He was supporting the Grateful Dead. He was their benefactor. I think there was an acid test. The Watts acid test happened around that same time down there. And that was when Owsley was feeding the band and only letting them eat an all meat diet, his paleo meat diet. So the band, you'd open, I heard
quite a beef in refrigerator.
Yeah, you'd open the refrigerator, it was all just beef, right? And so the Grateful Dead were in Olompali, in LA from February of 66, and they came back to San Francisco Bay Area in April of 66. So they were only there for 2 or 3 months in LA. And LA, obviously not their scene. They came back and they moved to Olompali. And Olompali today is a state park. It's in Novato, California. I don't know what it was then, but there was this white house, which we'll see a picture of. If we go to the first photo here, there's the house. And the Grateful Dead moved into this house. And again, they lived there for just a few months, right? They moved into Olompali in the spring of 66. And by mid to late summer 66 is when they moved to 710 Ashbury. And so
I have such a hard time with that chronology, but I guess you're right.
Yeah, no, I did the research. I went to the historians, and this all came from Nick Merriweather, who is one of the yeah.
Nick knows.
And so
I gotta say that just twists me because I can't put that one together.
So the Grateful Dead leave LA, they go to Nevada, they go to Marin for this brief period of time in the summer of 66. And they have this legendary party at Olompali. And Herbie, I'm going to flip through some of these photos and just kind of ID some people. And then I want you to tell me about Olompali and about this day. So this was a party. A lot of people came up from
the house was later burned down by a bunch of hippies.
Yeah, and it still stands, but it's dilapidated.
There's a documentary out now about it.
Yeah, and so it was a pickup band that was playing. Here are some hippies dancing. There was the pool that was there.
Note the enlightenment over the girl.
Right, the halo over the girl's head. And I'm guessing that's not a bikini, but that's actually her underwear and her bra.
Yeah,
very fashionable.
Woodstock, this is so we're prepared for the nudity part.
Yeah, this is 3 years before Woodstock, and you can see in the second photo with the naked woman. You can see in the background there's another naked woman there.
The girl with the suntan and the white butt that was bright red. So oh man,
where the sun never shines. The sun was hitting where it never and then here's the guy dancing with the naked girl. Here's the portrait of Neal Cassady, which I want you to talk a little bit about. Let's jump right into this. So you get Neal Cassady, one of the most legendary fixtures of the beat era, the hippie era. Obviously, Dean Moriarty in On the Road, drove across country with Jack Kerouac, meets Ken Kesey, becomes the bus driver for the Further Bus and the Merry Pranksters. And I have this photo hanging on my wall here also here in my studio. This photo, thank you for giving me all these photos over the years, Herbie.
I think we traded.
Yeah, we did. And
I didn't get the color Green Day.
What's that?
I didn't get the color Green Day.
Oh, I still owe you one. All right, I can make that happen easily.
I gotta say that those portraits you made were spectacular. When you're first talking about seeing Jim's work and my work, wanting to do that. Well, you got the best of both of us.
Thank you.
I gotta hand it to you because you did. Like Jim could do, did what he did and it was great, but it wasn't what I did.
Right.
And you managed to. When I talk about your stuff, I say it's screenshots of the hot chili peppers, and they're better than anything I did.
Well, thank you. I
then
appreciate
Then there was Bob Seidemann,
who I love also.
Seidemann is the genius. He's the guy.
I wish he was still alive. If Bob was still alive. So Bob Seidemann, in case you guys don't know who he was there's a very, very famous photo of the Grateful Dead taken in Daly City, California, which is just south of San Francisco. He brought him into the suburbs. All the houses look exactly the same. And the band was all backlit by the sun. And he had 5 people holding little tiny mirrors reflecting the sun back into the band's face.
A big brother guy's doing that. And the deal is, Daly City, there was Malvina Reynolds, folky back in late early 60s, and she wrote a song called Ticky Tacky Houses, and it was about those houses, which I've actually been in. They're very nice houses. They're just
right
together.
Oxy.
But so that was like from the Midnight Special kind of thing.
That idea with the mirrors in their faces.
Oh no, that was Bob's New York training.
Right.
And the way you put the sky in over the rooftops.
Yeah.
Special technique. I mean,
yeah.
You kind of, anyway, yeah, Bob.
Right.
I have that in my bedroom and I look at it every night and I say, and it's humbling for me to look at that.
Beautiful photo. Yeah.
Bob's a very difficult person.
Yeah. When Bob was sick before he died, we got a print of that shot from his wife. And we included in the Eyes of the World book that I put out a couple years ago that you have 20 or 30 photos in. And Bob also did the legendary photo that's the cover of the Blind Faith record with the prepubescent young girl that was super controversial. That's amazing. It even made it out. But anyway, let's get back to Neal Cassady and your photography. So tell me a little bit about Neal. What was he like? What was Neal Cassady like?
I didn't really have a relationship with him. He just scared me. Scary guy for me.
Okay.
Always talking himself and flipping the hammer and
right.
And this and he and Bob were real close. He lived at 710 and Bob told me to never get in the car with him.
Right.
Just never do it. And Bob knew me.
Yeah, I've heard Weir talk about Cassady before. And yeah.
Okay, yeah, it is.
All right. So after Neal Cassady, we have Jack Cassady from the Jefferson Airplane. And we have Grace Slick from the Airplane. And then the next photo, if you look in the background there's Phil Lesh with those really funky plaid shorts talking to a young Bob Weir, and the guy over on the right who's probably tripping his brains out. And then that's Ben Van Meter, the filmmaker behind him. We'll see a better picture of Ben. But we were talking about this. This probably was an acid test.
Pardon?
This probably was like the next best thing to an acid test.
The problem, like we discussed that yesterday, I wasn't really sure, but then I said, I remember looked at the photographs. Oh yeah, these people are definitely stoned. We spent the night there. I don't remember me taking acid that day, but at any rate, yeah.
Acid was still
nobody had ever done anything like this before.
Right.
This is what Woodstock became,
Yeah, and there's like just a few hundred people here, but this is, LSD is still legal. So we have the Grateful Dead living there. They invite the Jefferson Airplane up. Here's Bill Kreutzmann, and then Jerry with no beard making that funny face.
And that's Mickey.
That's Danny Rifkin.
Danny Rifkin.
Right, the band manager right behind him. Garcia. Here's Garcia lying on the ground. Phil talking to some guy.
That's Jerry Slick.
Oh, that's Jerry Slick, who was
the guy,
Grace's first husband, right?
Who just died. Yeah.
Yeah. Phil talking to some guy. Here's Rock Scully on the hood of the car. That's George Hunter from the Charlatans in the striped shirt. Everybody looking at the naked woman.
Freiberg's in there.
Oh, that's David Freiberg behind Rock Scully.
The girl is Tangerine.
Tangerine was her name?
Yeah. She was a fixture at 710 for a long time.
Lots of headlights in this photo.
That's a girl Freiberg.
Yeah. Oh, that's Girl Friday? Freiberg. Oh, that's Julia, who's now married to Mick Brigden. I just read her book. That's Julia. Of course it is.
Yeah, she's a hoot.
Yeah. That's amazing.
All those people.
The next one is George Hunter from the Charlatans, and then Dan Hicks from the Charlatans. I mean, this is rock royalty. Here's Naked Dude. This is Naked Guy before Naked Pole Guy up in Veneta in 72 with the derby on.
The girl who was with Dan is called Candy in Seattle. I named in hippie, and she later married Boss Gates.
Okay, I think we'll see another photo of her coming up later. And then, more hippies just hanging out. This is, I think, Darby Slick, right?
Yeah.
From the
Yeah.
Great Society. And then we got Peter Alvin from Big Brother.
It's great. This is great. He's got a bud and he's got a joint in the other hand.
And he's probably tripping. So he's got the trifecta. He's probably tripping on acid, Budweiser, and marijuana.
This is a very nice man. I don't know.
Oh, Peter and I are really good friends.
He's just a jewel to have around.
Yeah, Peter and I have been.
He's so
Peter,
good with kids. He's always got a trick in his pocket, and
Peter is a very humble man. He's a very humble person, and we've been good friends for 30 years. I love Peter Alvin. And then you got James Gurley, the other guitar player from Big Brother and the Holding Company, sitting on the ground.
The guitar player.
Yeah. And then this is the guy, Ben Van Meter, with the film camera. So Ben's the guy whose studio you use for the Led Zeppelin portrait and the Grateful Dead portrait with TC and Rod Stewart and all that stuff.
Yeah, he shared this big space with the redevelopment agency. And that was like a slum, knocked down. We knocked down the whole center city thing. And this is one of the buildings left standing. And it was the Zap Comics guy had a little sheath in one corner with the glassed-in area. So there was a hotbed of creativity going on.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, so here we are at Olompali. Here the next photo is Alton Kelly, the poster artist. Mouse and Kelly, but there's Kelly. And then this is one of the Thalen brothers, who is one of the founders of the psychedelic shop, and your roommate in the Haight. Is this the picture? Is this Chet Helms' wife on the farm?
Yes.
That's right. Chet Helms' wife. Of course, Chet Helms is the family dog, Avalon Ballroom concert promoter. That's Chet in the swimming pool with his wife. And of course, he's the person who brought Janis Joplin from Port Arthur, Texas, up to San Francisco and formed Big Brother.
Travis Rivers was the first to bring her up.
What's that?
Travis Rivers, I think, brought her
up. Yes, but then Chet went back and got her and brought her back the second time. Another topless beauty from the Haight. And then this last shot of this girl dancing inside the house. It's just beautiful. I mean, the movement and the energy in this photograph, we always talk about how do you capture movement in a still photograph. And this is a perfect example of capturing that vibe. So talk to me. We just went through all the Olompali photos. Just tell me more about this day, anything you remember, any photographs you want us to go back to. I mean, just an incredible experience at this day that was the predecessor for Monterey Pop and Woodstock and everything else that came after it. And there's just a few hundred people on drugs invited up from the Haight-Ashbury in Marin County on a beautiful summer day.
Yeah, it's kind of a long drive to get out there. The pictures sort of speak for themselves. Just kind of wandered around with everybody. The picture that precedes this one, the preteen girl. So that says a whole lot to me about that whole unfortunate thing with the kids. I just wonder what happened.
An amazing time. Amazing time.
There's a lot of darkness, too. There was the occult stuff and teeny boppers.
Church of Satan. I mean, even Charles Manson.
I went to one of those at first. Anton LaVey.
I did a portrait of Anton LaVey.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it was the most incredible thing. I went to his house on California Street. So Anton LaVey is the head of the Church of Satan. And he had this big black Victorian on California Street. And after he died, they knocked the house down because who's going to buy the house that was the head of the Church of Satan? But that's another story for another time. All right, let's roll into the human being.
It was great.
Yeah.
It was so friendly. It was such a great town to be in because it didn't cost a lot to live there. It was small. You could walk across. You could go from the Embarcadero to the ocean,
which is no longer true about San Francisco being an intensive city.
And there's lots of $2 dinner places and 50-cent movies, and rent was cheap, and it was really easy to be poor. young and poor and fabulously happy.
Yeah, amazing. So here we go. So we get to the human being, January of 1967. And at this point, LSD has been made illegal on October 6, 66, the old 666 date in October. So we're 2 months, we're exactly 2 months and 10 days, or 3 months rather, post LSD becoming illegal. And there's a big calling for the tribes to come and congregate in Golden Gate Park. Now, most of the photographers that are in Golden Gate Park at this point are shooting with 35 millimeter cameras. Jim Marshall was there. I'm sure there was a whole slew of press photographers. And Herbie Green is there with his medium format 2.25 camera, big and bulky, you know, and documenting that day. And so I'm going to flip through these photos quickly and then have you go back and talk about some of them as we get to them. But you can see, first of all, you know, I think were 20,000 people, they said, showed up for this event. So this is really the beginning of what the media would call the Summer of Love, right? The summer of 1967 is the Summer of Love. 65 and 66 was before the Haight was inundated with runaways from all over the country, and the media hadn't infiltrated, and you were living there in 64, 65, 66, which was really, you know, everybody I've ever talked to that was in the Haight at that time had said that was the pure, true Summer of Love. It wasn't in 67. By the time we got to the summer of 67, it was a media circus. And so, but still in the winter of 67, on a beautiful, cool, crisp, sunny day, 20,000 people show up in Golden Gate Park at the polo fields for the human being. And you were just telling me the other day, and I didn't know this, at the other end of the polo fields, my kids used to play soccer in the polo fields. At the other end of the polo fields, while there's 20,000 people celebrating with Tim Leary and Allen Ginsberg and the Beat Poets and the Grateful Dead and Jack Cassidy and the Airplane, there was a rugby tournament going on the other end of the polo fields. And you just learned about this also, or you knew about it, but tell me a little bit about that moment with the rugby and this whole other thing.
I only know about that because a little kid whose father was playing there got in contact with her because she's doing a documentary about the San Francisco Olympic Club, whose rugby team it was. And so she's doing a documentary on them, and they broke away from the Olympic Club for a lot of reasons and went on their own and toured and stuff. And so she's made a documentary about it, but she was there when they dropped the acid. You know, from the sky. And so anyway, the Hells Angels were there watching the rugby game, she tells me. And they were like astonished at how brutal the game is. And it really is a brutal game. So that's pretty amusing. And then I get this note from this girl. She sends me her class picture of when she was, you know, at the age when she was at that thing. And she said her brother managed to take a couple home with him. Chet Helms was telling me that after that evening, you know, after it was over, a lot of people in straight clothes and stuff were wandering into the Avalon. And Al's, like I said, to drop a guy in a parachute, and the guy threw out thousands of tabs of white light. I think it was called white lightning. And we had taken drop before we went there. So I was trying to take the light meter and the camera lens and make them, you know, work. This is difficult. And so at the end of it, we hooked up with Bill Thompson and his wife. Bill Thompson was the Jefferson Airplane's management. And we went over to my house, which is on Balboa, and we're just a couple of blocks from there. And we had dinner, and he gave us the White Lightning, which I think it was called. Anyway, took the stuff. We had a room on top of the flat. It was like all redwood and had an arch ceiling. Some carpenter guy did it. And I put the Ravi Shankar on the turntable and lit the incense and crawled into bed and had the most incredible acid experience of my life. It's documented in a book somewhere that I can't find, and the Mountain Girls in the Tube. the story goes, it's worth the research because anyway, it had to do with Cobra hoods and car wrecks and dying and I mean, just the whole full blown thing. You know, it was like, and so all these citizens are wandering around town that night behind that stuff. Yeah, the bee and.
So let me go flip through these photos here. So we got the girl with the polka dot leotard dancing. Love that little series. We got the woman with the Indian headdress. Here's Ralph J. Gleason. Ralph Gleason was the jazz critic for the San Francisco Chronicle, who really was the first, straight journalist to really love what was coming out of the Haight-Ashbury, the Airplane, the Grateful Dead, and he started writing about it and supported what Bill Graham was doing in the ballrooms. Ralph Gleason went on to co-found Rolling Stone magazine with Jan Wenner. I think he's still listed in the masthead as, spiritual guru, but that's a portrait of Ralph Gleason. Here's some hippie with a red turtleneck. This is the late. Oh, that's one of the Phelan brothers. Okay, got it. One of the Phelan brothers who founded the Psychedelic Shop and who Herbie lived with. Here's Jim Marshall, the legendary music photographer with his Leica cameras around his neck.
Five of them.
Yeah, 5 cameras.
One,
So,
two,
so Herbie's got his one 2.25 camera with a light meter and or two Hasselblads, and Jim's got 5 Leicas, or it looks like one maybe is a Nikon and 4 Leicas.
Yeah.
And the girl in the van, hippie girls. And then here's Herbie's attempt. This is Herbie's attempt at trying to be a live concert photographer. And there's a shot of Garcia with that red turtleneck playing his Guild hollow body guitar. And I think, Herbie, you were saying when we talked about this the other day, this is why you never became a live concert shooter, because that's what they would look like.
Yeah, sad.
More hippies. Who's the guy in the wheelchair again?
His name was Ambrose. And he had something to do. If Cheryl Farner's listening, she can call in and tell us about him because she knew him pretty well. Cheryl.
All right. And I love the outfit. I love the outfit that the girl is wearing behind him. I mean, it's just, again, it's timeless. I mean, that could be the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s. I mean, just.
No, that's that Josephine and Twiggy. That's kind of pretty conservative version of that. But that's the way girls dress. Yeah.
And then here's more crowd shots, big crowd. The girl with the U.S. Navy hat, love her, cute face, more hippie girls. I mean, and at this point, some of the runaways are starting to inundate the Haight, right? It's starting to change. The Hell's Angel, here's the Hell's Angel guy. I believe that this girl with the red sunglasses, this was your first wife, correct?
That's Marushka, yeah.
That's Marushka, who later went on to marry David Nelson from the New Riders. And then the girl with the orange juice. Here's the poets. We have Allen Ginsberg, who spoke at the Human Being. We have Michael McClure playing the auto harp. And I believe, didn't Michael McClure just die a couple weeks ago? I believe he did. And this is Gary Snyder, another one of the famous beat poets who made that transition to hippie.
Yeah, Lenore Kandel was there too, and I didn't think.
Oh, yeah, Lenore Kandel was there, another famous beat poet. And then here's the shot of the girl with the white dress. And I've seen photos of this girl. Jim Marshall has photos of this woman. I've seen other photos. There's the guy with the brownie camera behind. But the way that the light is coming through the dress and you see her breasts and her body of her out. I mean, this is just a beautiful, beautiful photograph of an iconic moment at the Human Being. I just really love this photograph. And then this is the last shot from the Human Being. And this is the cider. And if you look closely in this photograph, right at the very top of the apple cider, you can see a parachuter coming down. Right, you can see his body, and then you see his parachute up a little bit higher in the clear part of the bottle. Tell me the story behind this photograph. This is so legendary.
Yes, it's 2 transparencies sandwich.
Oh, it's 2 transparencies.
I shot the guy. I happened to see him coming down, and I put the Hasselblad up with the telly on it.
So you got a photo of it coming down.
It's all sky and it's all white. Yeah.
Right, because it was an overcast day.
Yeah,
so
it's easy. So and the bottle is just,
Right. And is
color, you know, and they matched up. They matched up really.
so it's a double exposure with two transparencies sandwiched together. Was it the parachuter who was the one who was throwing the LSD down from the sky?
Yeah.
Got it. So he's throwing pocketfuls of LSD down, and he parachutes and lands on the polo fields. And
newsflash, Ambrose. This is from Cheryl. Thank you, Cheryl. Ambrose was the astrologer who picked the date of the being.
got it. So that's the guy that's in the red outfit in the wheelchair.
Yeah.
He's the guy who picked the date for the human being to happen. All right. That's awesome. All right, Herbie, we're getting at the 2-hour mark here. So I'm gonna go really fast.
An hour out of this.
What's that?
I didn't think we get an hour, you know.
Yeah, no, I knew. So I'm going to go through this. Herbie lived in the Haight, took his Hasselblad or his Bronica, whatever, 2.25 out, and shot street scenes. I'm going to go through this really quick so then we can move over to some questions. I always loved this shot. And you were telling me the other day that, you know, it didn't mean a lot to you until I don't remember who said, maybe Bill Graham or somebody, but also the Ohio to San Francisco. And look, San Francisco is spelled wrong, which is incredible. But look at these kids. These are, you know, these kids are 16 years old, 15, 16, 17 years old, and they are leaving their houses in Ohio or Pennsylvania or Nebraska or Iowa, where their families did not understand what their lives were about. And they were taking great risks and coming to the Haight-Ashbury and hanging out on the streets and had nowhere to live and were crashing wherever they could. Some of them were being exploited and taken advantage of. But the great thing about Herbie's photographs from the Haight-Ashbury is that you'll look at a lot of these photos and there are a couple things. One, I love that a lot of these are wide shots. So if you go to the second photo here, Will, the Coca-Cola truck and the Chevy Corvair and the Beetle with the, you know, with the convertible, and then the wallpaper sign and the watch repair place.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. Look, she's like crimping her hair. That's just great.
So you're seeing what the neighborhood looks like, and there's not a lot of people there, right? There's old people walking around. The shot with the black guy walking forward and the older people in the background.
That's Super Spade.
Super Spade, and who was he?
Super Spade is a legend. He was a dealer, and he was murdered.
Oh, okay. All right.
In a deal on Mount Tamalpais, I think.
And here's the you know, San Francisco police officer walking across the street. He was a sergeant. Back then, at one point, somebody bombed the police station in Golden Gate Park. But again, there's the men's clothing store. There's the barber shop, which nobody was probably using at that point, except for the street people living there. The girl walking across the street. Here's another girl standing in front of the Volunteers of America. And I think you said to me that this girl was killed in a car accident right after this, right?
Not long after, right.
Right. And then here's Annie Sampson. And these are the steps of the band shell in Golden Gate Park. I've shot many bands on these steps. I think I shot Little Feet right there where this woman is standing. I mean, they're sitting right now. Annie Sampson was in the play Hair. So, you know, lots of people hanging out. I'm just kind of flipping through. This is Jack Cassady, 2 or 3 people up. You know, Jack from the Jefferson Airplane just walking down the street, and Herbie had his camera and just snapped a photo, said hi. They were friends. I love the shot with the, you know, the older woman walking behind the guy in the captain's jacket with the jeweler's store behind it. Then you get to the shot of the guy reading the newspaper with Ronald Reagan. That's Alan Cohen. Alan was Herbie's roommate, and also he founded the Oracle newspaper. The Oracle newspaper was the first alternative hippie newspaper in the country, and they were giving them out or selling them for a dime or a quarter on Haight Street. Alan became a friend of mine later in life, and actually in the 1980s, I made a multi-image slideshow with Alan Cohen about the Oracle and the history of the Oracle. I helped him put that together. This is Alan. Who's the woman leaning against Herbie on the street here?
Monica Collier.
Right, Monica Collier. And who is she again?
She's one of the Collier family, the anthropologists.
Got it. Okay.
I took classes from her uncle, John Collier, Jr. at State, about field gathering techniques. For, you know, to get as much as you can read. And anyway, it was a big influence on me. She's great.
And so much going on in this photo where she's leaning against Alan, the guy looking in the storefront behind, and the other woman turning around while she's walking away.
There's a lot of feet.
You just love that photo. And then the next one is Alan Cohn again with some of his staff from the Oracle.
Yeah, that's Travis Rivers.
Okay, and then the hippie girl with the laundry, and again looking at the cars and the hairstylist, the liquor store, the dry cleaner, the girl with the puppy, the guy, and I love this, the guy with the bedroll walking down the street. You know, those are all of his possessions. He'll crash anywhere. He doesn't even have other clothes. He has a bedroll, and then look at the old guy walking behind him with his package under his arm. I mean, that's just like the synchronicity of like just beautiful photography, right? You know, another girl on the Haight, the guy with the flute, hippies on the front porch. Who's this guy with the top hat and the fur coat and the bare feet again?
John Hammond.
And just a
PH Factor jug band guys.
Got it. Jug band musician, the guy with the dog, and the woman with the guitar. You said that she was a stripper, right?
Yeah, topless dancer.
Topless dancer, and
Alicia Fouché.
You know, amazing. Just like the characters and what people were doing.
Great hippie chick, you know.
Another hippie chick. You know, the guy holding up the stick or whatever that is. So just so many. I love the shot of this girl sitting on the park bench with the poncho over her. Again, you know, people came to the Haight-Ashbury. They hitchhiked there. They took buses there. They had no money. They just were hanging out on the streets. I love this. This is the woman looking up. That was Boz Scaggs' wife, correct?
Yeah, somebody would catch up.
That's Carmela.
Carmela, yeah.
So the woman looking up at you, you're standing up above her. That's Carmela. That later became Boz Scaggs' wife. And the next shot, this is Victor Moscoso with you looking down on him. One of the famous Big Five poster artists. Hippie girl dancing in the park. More people on the Haight. The guy with his, you know, he's got his jacket and his bag, and, you know, I mean, just such an incredible time. And as you can see now, here's a guy with a camera taking pictures. So now we're getting into more like 1967. The streets are way more crowded. If you remember in the beginning, there was a person here, a person there, and old people walking around. And now there's just people hanging out, you know, dozens of people on the streets. The hippies are taking over the Haight. The girl at the parking meter with the chiropractor sign behind her. You know, just so much going on everywhere. That's the guy here with the pendant and the sideburns. If you look behind it, there's a poster that says, "Are we next?" with a swastika with stars and red. That's the Wes Wilson poster, famous Wes Wilson poster. Hippies hanging out on the sidewalks, just sitting around. So much stuff going on. And then the last shot here is the Ashbury sign on the sidewalk. You know, here in San Francisco, every street has not every street, but all in the big neighborhoods has the names of the streets embedded into the concrete. And I just love this shot because it's just like this candid shot of these hippies on the street.
It's beginning of the end here.
Beginning of the end. And I know Herbie's got a lot. And then, of course, Herbie likes to end his presentation with "Say goodnight, Gracie." And there's Grace Slick giving us the finger because she's Grace and she can do that. Herbie's website, herbgreenphoto.com. Herbie sells his artwork. He sells his photographs. He sells the blotter acid with his Captain Trips image. If you have the resources and you can buy art in this terrible time of Rona, visit his website.
I feel terrible.
You know,
I hate doing this.
support the arts. Support the arts.
But wait, there's more.
Exactly. Herbie, anything you want to say about? So Herbie is offering. He's never done this before. He's offering smaller 8x10 prints. In the past, you could only get like bigger 1114s and 1620s and 2024s. And so he's trying to make artwork affordable for people. If you don't own any of Herbie's work, please collect it. It's beautiful. I have 4 or 5 of his images hanging on the walls here in my office, and I love looking at them every day.
Well, actually, I've got tons of stuff out on cassette decks, packages and stuff. People package. I love that.
So,
I mean,
Harris-
I've never had any problem with people like using.
all right, so let's do 10 minutes or so of questions. Harrison Azrati from Relix magazine has been gathering questions for Herbie. What do you got, Harrison, for Herbie?
Well, first question we have from your old friend Rosie McGee. Rosie wants to know, other than your well-known photos from the Grateful Dead's party at Olompali in 1966, did you ever take other sets of photos that weren't posed?
Well, the Haight Street. No, I don't do that. Know that. Hey, someday you will get that picture of you and Phil up.
And Rosie, we'd love to have you on this show down the road to talk about your photography. Rosie McGee was a Haight-Ashbury hippie chick. She's written a book about her experiences from her perspective, which I read a few years ago, and I truly loved it. She took some iconic photographs, and she was a hobby photographer, but she really, she was in the Grateful Dead family. She was Phil Lesh's girlfriend for a number of years. She was Grateful Dead family for a long time. And Rosie, I'll be in touch, and we'll talk about getting you on this show and talking about your work. Next question, Harrison.
Our next question is from another photographer, Danny Clinch. And Danny Clinch wants to know, what is your approach to portraits? Do you prefer catching a moment or controlling the situation?
A little of both. When you're doing Danny Clinch, gee, I know that name. When you do the natural light stuff, it's all, posed. And I had this trick. The idea was to make people look intelligent. So I don't know if I'm on screen or not. But I get people to sit like this, and then just put your head this way, and then slowly turn, up, down, like that. And somewhere in there is, the perfect picture. The other stuff, like using strobes and stuff, you're just blasting away. But the serious stuff was that way. But I always had that way of posing people. Can make sculptural shoulders and stuff like I've been doing all evening here.
And Danny Clinch, you're also another person on my list to have on this show. So I know where to find you. Danny will be on our show next week when we talk about the Capitol Theater book. Danny has a few photos in that. And Herbie, for me, when I do portraits, I'm the same way. I do a combination of trying to let it flow naturally, but also I try and direct people. Put your arms like that, fold your arms, put your hand in a pocket, turn your head that way. Kind of a little bit of both. And I know Danny's a very organic photographer and really lets things naturally happen before him. But I try and be in a little bit more control.
Point of interest, going back to Alan Cohen, he's the guy that got me started taking pictures of people.
Oh, really?
I was just doing photo 101 stuff, drain pipes and parking meters and the like, kid photo 101. And he said, she'd be taking pictures of people, and that scared me to death. I did do portraits, but as it turned out, I can do them.
Harrison, you got a question for us?
Yeah, we got a few more. So can you please talk about some of your favorite memories working with the Grateful Dead? And that's a question from Jimmy S.
Oh, I really can't answer that.
Was it a more innocent time in the 60s, like when you were hanging out with them and taking pictures? Was it more innocent and less pressure?
It was fun. I mean, you would go out and just take pictures. There was no, it was fun. And you could do it as long as you wanted. I have memories, talking to Garcia when we were photographing, and we'd always talk about family and stuff like that. And it was personal. I can't think of any humorous moments, where I fell over backwards, or anything like that. But it wasn't that kind of thing. But except with Garcia, we always had these conversations about failing eyesight and dental work, and girlfriends and stuff.
So getting back to Jerry Garcia, what was your first encounter with Jerry like?
Oh, I was walking around North Beach, probably 1963, maybe before, and I heard a bluegrass band playing out of one of the clubs. I think it was called the Fox and the Hound. So I walked in there and went into the music room, and there's the Sleepy Hollow Hog Stompers. And so after they said, I just walked up onto the stage and said hello and introduced myself, and I loved him right then. It was pretty, so, and then a year later, there we were, you know. Oh, it was you, you know. It's fun.
Awesome. Harrison?
Next, we got a light question from John M. And John M. is curious what albums are behind you right now.
In the Dark and Without a Net.
What's the second one?
Without a Net.
Oh, Without a Net. Nice.
Great. Yeah, I weaseled that one. I did the pre-press for the painting. And I said, there was a rush job. And I was at Faulkner's and doing copying paintings and stuff. And they came in the day before it was supposed to, you know, be done. And I said, well, I'll do this. I shouldn't do it, but I want a gold record. And I got one.
Nice.
Yeah.
Next up, sorry.
Go ahead, Harrison. Question?
Next up, we have a question from Brian B. And Brian wants to know if there are any artists who you wish you had an opportunity to photograph.
Well, Willie Nelson, of course. I didn't get to do enough. You know, when I went to LA and was photographing there, I should have photographed everybody. But it didn't work out that way. I have thought that if I had my choice between photographing the Beatles and the Grateful Dead, it would be the Grateful Dead. Because there are so many pictures of the Beatles. Yeah, and there's always one big collection of Beatle photographs emerging, you know. And no, being able to work with the Dead is great, you know, because it saved my life, actually. And coming back and getting to do that in the dark stuff, in Dylan Dead and Jerry on Broadway and stuff, you know, that made me. I mean, that brought me back. And because, like I say, I hadn't done a job with a band for 6 years. They hadn't made a record for 6 years either. Magic. Anyway, so yeah, I'm sure if I thought about it, but this is my nap time, and I'm not going to come up with names that would like. But yeah, I would love to photograph Willie Nelson.
How old are you, Herbie?
78.
78. You're looking good.
Thank you.
All right, let's do one or two more questions, and let's let Herbie go take a nap.
Great.
And
I got to say hello to the guys in Philadelphia, Richie and Scott and Mark. Mark Karen, I got to say hello to. Scott, Steve Eisenhower, Teddy Bear Fitzgerald, my East Coast crew. We chased Rat Dog around. There's a bunch of us when I moved out here. We chased Rat Dog all over New England. It was so much fun. I love that band. I don't know if any of you guys did, but I really did. And I liked other ones. Well, not the other ones. Whatever it was. When I came out here, but it was right after Jerry died and stuff, and there were the band had just formed the other ones, and that was the first band I saw in Boston, and the audience was all old guys like me, and then I got to watch it over the years turn back into what it was, you know, like the Rat Dog and the Dead and stuff. It was like a really interesting 5 years.
well,
And I got to thank my friends.
the good thing about you moving to Boston right after Jerry died is that then it was my turn in the rotation. Like you talked about your turn, it was my turn because I did the portraits for the publicity for the other ones, the Dead, Further, and
Further, my band.
and Phil.
Sure.
I did all those publicity photos. So I know you did a shot of Further also on the East Coast.
Yeah, I got to do some Further, and I did Rat Dog a couple times.
Yeah, I mean, and we actually I never got to talking about that. You and Phil have just an incredible relationship. So I knew that when Further came to town and you did that shot, and you also did that Relix magazine cover that was Bob and Phil together doing Rat Dog.
Red Rocks.
And didn't they swap a head out on that photo or something? I feel like they had to swap a head to.
No.
No, I'm mistaken. So
Background, maybe I don't think so. I was there. I said, when do you want to take a picture? You guys, when you finish the sound check. And I said, just give me 5 minutes. Give me 3 minutes. And I had by Lumix.
Uh-huh.
I took 6 exposures and
Uh-huh.
perfect. My portraits of Bob and Phil are really good. The last ones I did.
That's about their attention span, 3 minutes. So it was perfect timing.
Yeah.
All right. One last question from Harrison before we wrap things up.
Last question is from a guy named Mac, and Mac is curious how psychedelics played a role in the voicing of your portraits.
I think the portraits, particularly the wall pictures and stuff, capture. You can look in the eyes and you see acid. That's how I look at it. I mean, it's like surrealistic pillows just dripping acid off the walls, and you can see it. I see it in all those portraits and all those people. I gotta say hi to Barry and her daughter, who just graduated from high school, Tam. Just so sorry, poor kids. Anyway, good for you. And Charlotte Carp, if you're out there, love you. Love you. One person I've known forever, and just go. All right. So I do the Trump. Okay.
All right. Hey, Herbie, thank you so much for.
I had to do that.
Right. Yeah. Perfect. Herbie, thanks for hanging out with us for a couple of hours and telling stories and showing your work. We really, really appreciate it.
Let me thank all the heads too. I'll tell you a story. The last story.
Last story.
I was browsing to David Grans about something. I said, I did this stuff for them and I showed them the picture. They're great and they didn't care. And he said, Herbie, you don't do it for them. You do it for the heads. And that's the truth. True.
All right. All right, everybody. So thank you for tuning in. This is Photos and Stories. I'm your host, Jay Blakesberg. Next Sunday, May 24th, we'll have, I think, 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 photographers, and I'll be co-hosting with my pal, Stephanie Susanjara. We're going to be talking about this book. That's one of my, I love that. Hold that up again, Herbie. Hold that up again. Will, do you get that? That's Garcia on Broadway from the 80s.
That was a great sitting, Bill Graham.
Love that setting.
This is one I knew with a minute, but I spent like an hour in Bill's office talking about what you're going to do, what are you going to do? And I'm walking back to Faulkner's. This is kind of like a lightning bolt, and said, top hat, pull the guitar out. That's only happened maybe 2 or 3 times in my life.
That's amazing. I have the poster. I don't have a print. I'd like to get a print of that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we're going to be talking about this book, which is the Capitol Theater book, and I'm going to have a bunch of photographers. I'll be co-hosting with Stephanie Susanjara. Stephanie wrote the essay in that book. Thanks, Herbie. Stephanie wrote the essay for the book, which is an amazing historical essay about the Capitol Theater. That's next Sunday, May 24th, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. And then on June 7th, Sunday, June 7th, I'm going to have Amelia Davis. And Amelia owns, operates, and manages the Jim Marshall Archive. Jim was a contemporary of Herb Green, legendary photographer. He took so many photos that the Grateful Dead on Haight Street, Bob Dylan rolling the tire down the street, Johnny Cash flipping the bird, all the Johnny Cash at Folsom Prison photos. So we're going to have Amelia Davis talking about Jim Marshall's work on June 7th. And I think after that, we've got a couple of fun things in the works. We haven't figured out exactly what's next yet, but it'll be on Father's Day. Will be the next one after that. We're going to skip a Sunday and do these every other Sunday is sort of the plan. It takes a couple of weeks to build the PowerPoints. Thank you all for watching. Again, I want to remind you to go to saveourstages.com. Support your independent local music venues any way that you can. This is so important. Support your band, support your people. If you have the resources, donate money, just like you're going to shows and buying tickets. I know it's a tough time out there, a lot of unemployed people, but if you can do it, please do it. It's much appreciated. Herbie, thank you again. Herbie's back here for a second.
I have to thank you. My wife told me I was negligent.
That's fine. Please. Okay.
And I thank you.
You're welcome. The floor is yours, Herbie. Say goodbye to everybody.
Say goodbye. Say goodnight, Gracie. Or say goodnight, Herbie. Say goodnight, Herbie.
Good night, Herbie.
Thanks, everybody. All right, over and out.
Don't
And,
forget.
we're done.
Bye.
Good night. Thanks, everybody. See you next time. Thank you.